Good day, everyone. Welcome to Blacklogic. So the Senate unanimously approves the bill to force release of Jeffrey Epstein files and what's behind the sweep and who's exposed. So we're going to cover that probably a little more extensively than I originally expected to, but nonetheless, we're going to talk about the potential releasing of the Epstein files and some of my thoughts behind it. Zoox begins offering Robotaxi rides in San Francisco, and this is the future of transport or surveillance risk. And I don't know if you guys are aware that the United States Department of Education faces sweeping dismantling by the Trump administration, state control versus federal safeguards. Court blocks new Texas congressional map, which is going to be a major blow to GOP-backed redistricting, ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. And China was playing chess while America was really playing checkers, because this is the part where China has invested over $200 billion secretly in the United States. Pope Leo calls out the U.S. for extremely disrespectful treatment of illegal migrants. Moral authority meets political flashback. And we're going to talk about some of the other previous popes that actually spoke out against racial disparity for Black Americans in America and how that pretty much turned out and hasn't really benefited Black people at all. So as I was stating earlier, the U.S. Senate unanimously passed a bill requiring the public release of the Jeffrey Epstein files, including names of associates and sealed testimony. That's going to be major. And the unanimous Senate votes are really, really rare, especially on explosive topics like these Epstein network and how many people, potential people who are connected to it. See, my question is this. Who already saw the Epstein files? And because of security reasons, political reasons, national security reasons, why they didn't state what's actually in the files? Why do we have to have the files to release instead of 10 people who have access to the files tells us some of the egregious things that we possibly think that's in these files? Because here's the one thing that no one's really saying out loud. I don't think no one is really saying this out loud. How many of you guys believe that President Trump is in the Epstein files? Raise your hand. That's one thing. People have been kind of hinting around it. I don't know if they're fear of their careers, but they really haven't just said, you know what? We strongly believe that President Trump is in the Epstein files, not just in the Epstein files as a close associate or a friend, but there's some dirt there. That is what people are really reluctant to say. But you can just feel the energy behind it. They really want these Epstein files to see if the president is involved in any illegal activity of any kind. But would you and I be surprised? Again, didn't vote for Kamala Harris, didn't vote for Donald Trump. But I'll tell you this. If anybody is surprised, first and foremost, if anyone is surprised if President Trump doesn't sign this bill to release the files, would that surprise you? It wouldn't surprise me. Then it wouldn't surprise me if President Trump is in the files, but there's no dirt on them, or things have been deleted or redacted in any way. Again, I won't be surprised by anything that comes out of this. If we find massive amount of illegal activity that he's done, I wouldn't be surprised. He's a convicted felon. Why would I be surprised? I just want you guys to ask yourself these questions because I know I have. Because if Congress is pushing this hard, what's really about to be exposed? For years, powerful names have hidden behind redactions and court seals where these records are sealed, no one else can see them. Now, America could get answers by this, but whose careers, whose reputations, whose freedom really hang in the balance? I want you guys to think about this. The House passed this bill 427 to 1. Now, who was the one that opposed it? Was it Trump? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But I asked that question because while the Senate agrees to deem the legislation passed as soon as it arrived in the chamber, they really wanted it to be done. I mean, I'm pretty sure Marjorie Taylor Greene was first in line. This is monumental, in my opinion. President Donald Trump, who initially opposed the measure, don't forget, one of his campaign pillars were to release the Epstein files with all these other files. Then in one of his board meetings in the White House, and it was talking about Jeffrey Epstein, he like, we're still talking about this creep. We got Texas, we got Canada, and we're still talking about the Epstein files. Yes, Mr. President, these are one of the pillars you ran on while a lot of millions of Americans voted for you. Listen, I'm telling you this. When people stated that Black people voted for Barack Obama simply because he was Black, you're right. Some of us admitted to it. Yeah, you're right. He's Black. He's articulate. He's intelligent. He's Black. Let's vote him in. First time in history. We made history. Okay, but nothing really benefited Black people from voting in Barack Obama, just to be very transparent to you guys. But I digress. Millions of I would say 1 million Americans voted for President Trump just so the Epstein files could be released. That's how powerful that the American people are. Some of them like, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump. I don't really know too much about politics, but I do want those Epstein files released. I'm really curious. People love cold cases. They love these shows, 24 hours, all these crime syndicates. I get it. It's juicy. It's entertaining. So some millions of Americans just voted for the Epstein files to be released. So you can't be on national TV talking about that creep. Mr. President, now granted, your stance on a friend can change over time. Your friend can be a sex child offender and trafficker like a Jeffrey Epstein. And then you're like, you know what? That's not my friend anymore. I never knew he was doing those things. But when we dial back the tape, and we look at some of the accounts of the women, and I think I misspoke yesterday. It wasn't that I think it wasn't that Trump went to Epstein. Epstein and a lady friend of his went to Trump's office. I think I had it reversed yesterday, but nonetheless, she stated that while right there in front of Epstein, that President Trump allegedly was fondling her. And then when Epstein and her left the office, she was, say, hey, why did you let him do that? Again, that's allegedly. But again, you're around all this controversy, right? You guys are familiar with the term guilty by association. Now, I don't like that because it's almost like you're guilty in the court of public opinion. It's the same difference without any tangible evidence or accounts. So my thing is this: if he is in the Epstein files and there's statements being made that he did indeed do some egregious sexual things with minors, then what hardcore evidence other than statements being made in the file that can convict the president? The only way is that they're going to have compelling statements and evidence in the Epstein files, and they're going to have those victims to come forward and give detailed, vivid accounts of their interactions. That's the only way I can see this hurting the president, regardless if people think he's guilty or innocent. That's the only way. You're going to have those statements, those testimonies, okay, those seals records open, and then the testimonies of the actual victims, and give vivid accounts, meaning dates, times, places, names, who were around you, what the room looked like. That's the only way that this will go down, because they have the Epstein File Transparency Act that directs the Attorney General to release records concerning Epstein, his former associates, and convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell, and other reference in Epstein's criminal activities. Now, there's information that's tied to ongoing investigations or containing sensitive victim data that can be essentially withheld. And Trump has urged the Justice Department to investigate prominent Democrats. Again, Trump has urged the Justice Department to investigate prominent Democrats in financial institutions for potential ties to Epstein. Why just the Democrats, Mr. President? Remember all these presidents before President Trump? Remember President Biden, they always will operate under the veil of bipartisanship. Everything was bipartisanship. And I talked to my brothers and sisters on the Republican Party and the conservatives, and we came to a bipartisan agreement. Every president before Trump, his second term, not his first term, they're always talking about bipartisanship. Whether it be Biden, Trump, Obama, Trump, whatever. They was always talking about bipartisanship. You don't hear President Trump talk nothing about bipartisanship. He's really trying to install the red wall, the red wave, and have MAGA to control the world. I don't know if you guys are watching it like I'm watching it. I see it. I mean, it's prevalent. It's in your face. I want you guys to just think about what I just said. Trump has urged the Justice Department to investigate prominent Democrats and financial institutions. Why not prominent political figures? Why not prominent Republicans, Democrats, and independents? Why just Democrats? He's just letting you know he don't like any Democrat. This is political and this is economical. Maybe you guys know better. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this timeline being released on Jeffrey Epstein. Okay. And to say here that the Epstein Files is how the world has come to know the thousands of pages of documents related to 2 criminal investigations into sex trafficking by financier and friend to the rich, famous, and powerful Jeffrey Epstein. What's in those files? Who is named and in what context? And whether they should be released to the public and become a topic of obsession and conversation on both sides of the political aisles after Epstein's death in 2019. But in 2025, those questions and others roiled the second administration of U.S. President Donald Trump, as even some of Trump's most loyal supporters expressed a sense of betrayal at his administration's reluctance to release information related to the Epstein files. Now, it goes on to this whole timeline of accounts of potential information. Again, this is coming out of the Britannica. And if you guys are really interested in this, I know people love kind of stories like this, but if you are, they really break it down. You know, you have here 1980s to 2000, his rise to prominence. How did Jeffrey Epstein even become a billionaire? You know, this is kind of like one of those fantasy rich white men stories that never really happened to non-white men. I'm just being real. He kind of never really had any great talents or skills, and he did something for a friend and he kind of figured it out. And then all of a sudden he figured out how to handle $1 billion account, and he somehow became a management firm for the filthy rich because his rich friend introduced him to other rich friends, and he got his portfolio off of no skills or talents. And I think in some regards, people say that he's Jewish and he's a Mossad agent. It's a really interesting story. Like, you don't really have any talents or skills, and you manage your friend's, bank account, and you figured it out, I guess. Or he said you did a good job, or he just introduced you to other billionaires, and then you became a billionaire. And I don't know. I've never fell into millions, let alone billions. Hopefully I can fall into a couple of hundreds. Man, I mean, the American dream is great on some side of the house, is it not? But anyway, they had throughout the 1990s, Trump and Epstein socialized, and Trump sometimes hosted Epstein at Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach. So again, they've had they're really trying to build a timeline here in the Britannica of how the relationships, and even back then, how close Epstein and Trump were. The Trump-Epstein relationship continued. Let me blow this up for you guys. Continue into the 2000s, including several key events that would capture public and media attention. Decades later, in 2000, a 16-year-old named Virginia Guffrey was working at Mar-a-Lago when Jeffrey Epstein's longtime partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, Oh, Ghislaine. I keep saying Glassine, but it's called Ghislaine. Okay. So her reading a massage manual invited her to become Epstein's masseuse. And Guthrie, who would sue Epstein in 2009 and Maxwell in 2015, said Epstein and Maxwell then recruited her into a sex trafficking ring during which she was passed around like a platter of fruit to Epstein's influential friends. Guthrie may have been at the center of the eventual collapse of the relationship between President Trump and Epstein. Trump said in 2025 that the falling out was because Epstein did something that was inappropriate. He hired help, and I said, don't ever do that again. He stole people that worked for me, and I threw him out of the place, persona non grata. Trump later made clear that he was referring to Guthrie and others. A White House spokesperson said early this July, the fact that his president kicked him out of this club for being a creep. So again, there's testimony that is basically backing the breakage and ties that President Trump had with Jeffrey Epstein. But I know the questions you guys are asking, what happened before the breakup? Was there any impropriety, any illegal activity before? But the way it's kind of being worded here is that when Jeffrey Epstein started to get really weird and do inappropriate things, President Trump cut ties with him automatically. He cut ties with him automatically. That's what that story or that timeline is making it seem. Soon as things started to get really weary, get really strange, inappropriate, and indifferent, President Trump, supposedly based upon this report, he cut ties with Jeffrey Epstein. I guarantee you the reason why I'm doing this is because you have to understand how they have these think tanks that get people. Like when you go to these lawyers or these lawyer firms, let's say you just had $1 million lawyer on retainer. They have a board of the most intelligent and most powerful lawyers all at one table, and they act as think tanks. What strategy, what we can say, what we shouldn't say that's going to get our client out of jail. That's the only way that a lot of these lawyers are making millions and billions of dollars. There are think tanks to a certain degree because they sit around and they pontificate on how to get people out of jail. If you're a defendant lawyer, that is. It goes on to state right here, we're going to finish up with this Epstein, but it states that the Epstein estate released a redacted version of the birthday album to the House Oversight Committee, which had subpoenaed. So we subpoenaed the birthday album, and then they redacted names from the birthday album. So the Oversight Committee was like, why give us only redacted documents? Why can't we know the guests who went? Again, timeline. Why is this important? Well, we had the breaking of ties between President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. But now, if President Trump was part of the birthday list and they somehow link or find evidence that he actually attended, then everything stated that President Trump stated that, I cut ties with him, he was being a creep, he was being inappropriate. But wait a minute, you went to his birthday party. So now, as a lawyer, which I'm not, they can basically state that all of that is null and void, because it seems as though you go to somebody's birthday party, your friendship is still intact. Let me tell you, I've had friends that I'm no longer friends with. I didn't go to their birthday party. We're no longer friends. I don't agree with your lifestyle. I don't do the things you do. Whatever the case friends may do, you stole money from me. You try to hit on my wife. How friends break up, you're not going to their birthday party. So again, Lori's like, that's null and void. You still have a relationship. You know why? Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. At the bottom is a signature that appears to be Trump's. When the journals first published the account, Trump denied the story and sued the paper. And after the release of the drawing, the White House issued a statement saying that the president did not draw this picture and he did not sign it. You guys remember that? He was part of the birthday list. You see how the timeline is so contradicting? It's so contradicting. And when I read this a little bit earlier, it really showed me that They're basically just building a timeline between Epstein and President Trump. Now, I wonder if you guys are going to put this together as I did. If President Trump doesn't sign the Epstein Transparency Files or Transparency Act, so the files can be released to the public or prominent people in government so they can investigate. He's expected to sign it, but what if he doesn't sign it? He doesn't have to sign it. They can do some legislating pressure, and then he can just veto it. Like, nope, I'm not going to sign it. Now, a lot of you will say, well, if he doesn't sign it, then the American people knows he's guilty. No, they won't. We won't know. Just because he doesn't sign it doesn't mean he's guilty. There could be other players at play. It could be a secret shadow government. It could be a cabal, rich, powerful people controlling. People always stated, now people think as though it's a conspiracy theory. But for, decades, people were always chanting that there is a cabal, there is a shadow government, there's a deep state, there's another echelon of government that's controlling Congress, the president, and the senators. And most of these people are billion-dollar businessmen that we are not familiar with. It's not your Bill Gates. It's not your Warren Buffett. They know them, but these guys, they hide behind shell companies, but they essentially control the U.S. in some parts of the world, if not all. So when you think about that, what if he is trying to protect the rich, powerful, and famous? And if he doesn't, those attempts on his life could come into fruition. And I'm not wishing death on anyone. But again, we have to think outside of the box, because that's what a lot of these think tanks do. Your PragerU's, your Heritage Foundation, the one who made Project 2025. How do you think they came up with that agenda? These think tanks get together and they really think about how they're going to go about accomplish this psychological mission on the people and what people to target. That's why lately I've been breaking down white supremacy, not to a point where we're just going to keep blaming white supremacy, and the system of white supremacy. No. When people, in my regards, when I'm saying about white supremacy, is that they created a system to fool poor and middle-class white people to believe that they are supreme over everybody else, regardless of their class and or status. So take, for instance, I'm LeBron James, I got billion-dollar business. That white person in Appalachian Mountains, that person in the double wide trailer, that person living in the hills somewhere still believe they are smarter, more successful, and better than me. That is the illusion that the system of white supremacy actually provides. And they play on your stupidity. They play on your rage. They play on your hate. They play on your poverty. And they say the reason why we have these issues in society is because of Black people. It's because of violence. And you live in the hills of Mississippi, or let's go even better, you live in the hills of West Virginia, but you're saying the reason why you're poor and the reason why your neighborhood community is ran down is because of Black people shooting up places in Chicago. I don't know how Chicago, Illinois connects to West Virginia mountains. I don't know how we do that. But that is what the system of white supremacy does. It really makes unsensible connection and links for people to be emotionally charged. Again, that's kind of my thought pattern when I'm explaining how elites control people. Now, last with this Epstein Files, Larry Summers resigned from OpenAI, also known as ChatGPT, amid Epstein revelation, and it kind of faded out here, but I'm going to read this very quickly. Former Treasury Secretary and Harvard President Larry Summers has resigned from the OpenAI board. He and the company told Access in separate statements Wednesday amid new revelations about the depths of his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I want to know the billionaire, the millionaire who was tied to Jeffrey Epstein, and they started to not only transfer their currency into gold so they can move it without too many hands knowing what they're doing, they turn it into minerals and gold and silver and then shipped it to another country. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have too many ties on the rich, powerful, and famous. I wish I did, because I would love to track their movements right now. Now that this is expected to get signed, I want to know who is fleeing to another country right now. I want to know the people, the links and connections of names of the Epstein files, who is now on their chartered jets, on their private jets, flying first class to another country right now, because they know they did something illegally and sexually to minors, these young women, and they know their name on the list, and so they already fleeing town. I just wish I had a monitor or beacon I could just do and find, and like, hey, this person is leaving town. Wait a minute, there's another billionaire. Wait a minute. We can really start to make some connections. That's all I'm getting at. That's all I'm getting at. Senate expected to send Epstein file bill to Trump. And my only question is Trump going to sign it? That's all I have. Is Trump going to sign it? Now, I don't know if you guys are aware that Amazon self-driving unit Zoox has launched Robotaxi rides for employees in downtown San Francisco. And what they're doing is inching closer to the public rollout. Driverless cars aren't just futuristic, they're political, in my opinion. Who owns the data, who loses the jobs as AI-powered taxis enter a lot of these cities. Again, this is starting in California. And there are issues of surveillance, insurance liability, class access will widen. And the question, I guess, at the end I have, is this innovation or invasion of American jobs? Ladies and gentlemen, Americans, immigrants inside of America, a lot of them do Uber and Lyft. A lot of them do Uber and Lyft, and they really rely on Uber and Lyft to feed themselves and their families. Okay? And it's not that I'm being heart-wrenched to the situation, but I want you to think about this. You get on your Uber app, you get on your Lyft app, you schedule a ride. The ride comes, take you where you need to go. You have maybe a small interaction with the Uber driver, or maybe not. You got your earphones on, you're just enjoying your music. But now you have Amazon with Robotaxi. No, I'm sorry. You have Amazon with Zoox, their Robotaxi. You have Alphabet's Waymo with their Robotaxi. You have Tesla with their Robotaxi. So now you have, Alphabet is basically Google, but you have Google, Amazon, and Tesla doing Robotaxis. In Waymo. And I know Waymo's Google, my apologies. But now you have three major players in Robotaxis. So what is that basically saying? The same thing that Costco and Sam's, Costco's and Sam's did to local grocery stores, the same thing that Amazon has done to local retail stores. Ladies and gentlemen, the same thing is going to happen when Uber and Lyft took over taxis. Now Uber and Lyft, okay? Now Uber and Lyft are being taken over by Robotaxis. And here's why I don't understand this. Now, I'm pretty sure Uber, because I think I was doing some research on Uber, they're actually trying to come out with their own Robotaxi. But they could easily partner with one of these companies, because eventually Uber and Lyft are going to have to make contracts or come up with their own version of Robotaxi to stay in the market. But guess what happens to the people? We're talking about thousands of jobs. Thousands of jobs are going to be lost. Is this good for America? Is this bad for America? Now, granted, there's been a lot of horror stories when it comes to Uber and Lyft drivers. Uber and Lyft drivers getting into fights with some of their passengers, passengers throwing up in someone's car. But now these cars are going to belong to Amazon, Google, and Tesla. They're going to belong to those companies. So those companies are going to be responsible for maintaining those cars, cleaning those cars, maintenance those cars, fueling those cars, etc. So that's the question I have regarding this, because there's going to be thousands of people with companies like this. And again, this is another form of AI and automation. But thousands of people are going to be without jobs. Is this better for America or worse than America? Because guess what? I call me one of these robo taxis that I get in. I can be on my phone. I can listen to music. I don't have to worry about the driver talking to me. I don't have to worry about talking to the driver. But a lot of people love their interactions with people. Like my wife would say that I'm an extrovert. I'm a hybrid. I'm an extrovert. Sometimes I can be an introvert, but I'm up for a great conversation. But nonetheless, when I look at that, what do Americans really want? What do Americans really need? But once again, we have to look at the bigger factor that this is going to be thousands of jobs lost. Slowly but surely, slowly but surely, and I know you guys already know this, there's been thousands of people laid off already. And with the advancement in technology, which I love advancement in technology, but at the expense of the American people and people who depend on a lot of these, share rides or ride lift, they're gonna be without jobs. This is what you're being replaced with right here. And don't get me wrong, I think it's pretty cool. It's almost kind of like a party bus, especially like this. Some people carry around a small speaker, and you can have drinks in there. Right? You got a seatbelt, you can drink in there. Some people are going to use this as, I'm telling you, they're going to use this as a party bus. Yep, they're going to use it as a party bus. Right now, this is in San Francisco, but I can see this easily. People drinking in there, people partying there. I can see it. I just want to keep you guys abreast of what's going on because there's still a lot of people losing their job. Now, the Trump administration GOP had introduced a roadmap to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education, and they're aiming to return power fully back to the states. And this matters because education funding, civil rights protections, and federal oversight are basically on the chopping block. And again, many Americans are stating that it's about freedom. Others wanted that it's about defunding equity. Either it empowers parents or erodes standards that the future of American classroom is being rewritten. Now, I don't know right now, but I can predict this is not going to be good. Currently, the agency oversees the country's $1.6 trillion federal student loan portfolio that provides funding to low-income students and enforces civil rights in classroom across the country. And what made me think about this, we had federal oversight, meaning that we always have, a higher court to go to if you feel like there was some sort of civil rights violation when it comes to attending schools around America, especially, our colleges and universities. There was even higher than state, because states, to a certain degree, they can enact legislation that can be very racist at its foundation and have some disparities within the legislation. Whereas with the federal government, they have to play both sides because, again, you have Democrats, you have Republicans. So some people will state that the Democrats make sure the Republicans don't go too far into racism. And, I've heard this. They keep them at bay and not being too racist or too biased towards one group or another. Okay. They said it's a balancing act. That was my take. But the states can be, they're operated very, very different because they only represent a state and not an entire country. So I kind of looked this up on Gemini very quickly so it can compile it says the following states frequently rank near the bottom in national equity reports due to significant measurable gaps in well-being and opportunity between Black and white populations. Now, of course, you have your usual suspects: Mississippi, Wisconsin, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio. And it says lowest overall racial equity index is Mississippi. Criminal justice and economic gaps is Wisconsin. Lowest overall score in a national inequality report was Indiana. High disparities in justice and health, Illinois, and poor outcomes in equity metrics in Ohio. And they was basically giving them rankings of how they rank nationally. Okay, so I would say, hey, listen, if they're going to dismantle the Department of Education, these states right here probably not that good to live in. But I had to do a little deeper dive. Okay, I said provide the education disparities. Okay, And they kind of just broke it down. K through 12, national Black students consistently score lower on the National Assessment of Education Progress than their white peers. For example, they kind of give out more detailed information. 84% of Black fourth graders did not read at a proficient level compared to 59% of white fourth graders. The gap in math is similarly significant. And as you continue to go down, where do the disparities kind of come from? You kind of ask people like, what state are you from? States with the largest black-white gap, Wisconsin, Connecticut, Minnesota. And then overall education equality or high school graduation rate, Wisconsin again, Nebraska, North Dakota. Bachelor degree attainment, what is the worst? Connecticut, Colorado, Massachusetts. And by the way, a lot of these states, like Massachusetts, of course, majority white. They don't have a strong Black population. And then again, Wisconsin. So Wisconsin is consistently up here. I would definitely tell, hey, Wisconsin is not a great state for people that are non-white to live in for educational purposes. Then it states here, the states with the smallest Black-white gap, okay, which is best. Wyoming, New Mexico, and West Virginia. Wow, West Virginia is crazy. Then they have Mississippi here for high school graduation rate, okay? And Wyoming, Maine, Vermont. And Maine and Vermont are predominantly white. There's not too many Black people live there. I've been up there before. Let's say here, see standard test scores, Vermont, Alaska, and New Hampshire. So again, these are what we call lily white states. So you're not going to really have a strong Black population. And basically the Black people that live in those states, they're going to just, they're not a significant number like other states with larger Black populations, like a Wisconsin with Green Bay and Racine and cities that have, really large Black populations. So that's why those numbers are the way they are. Now, I guess when I'm talking about the Department of Education, whether it empowers parents or enrolls standards for future of American classrooms, I mean, I guess we'll find that out a little bit later as more stats and reports come out. A federal court has blocked Texas' new congressional map, saying it violates the Voting Rights Act by weakening the power of, believe it or not, Black and Latino voters. That the redistricting is power and who you vote for. That's what it pretty much stands for, and who gets heard. It really starts with the map. When those lines are drawn to benefit one party and silence another party, democracy in the republic actually bends, and Texas just got called out. So again, a lot of these federal judges, they're like, wait a minute, and they kind of knew what was already going on, but now it's getting really egregious. Like Republicans nationwide are really just trying to take over the U.S. Now, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, you shouldn't want one party to have ultimate influence and power over the people, because that is how we get into fascism. That is how we metamorphosize into a dictatorship. That's how these things occur. When these political parties gain more influence and can turn more votes and transform more districts by the way of these redistricting maps. None of us should want that, okay? There should always be a balance, in my opinion, in America. Now, this was kind of, again, this is kind of indicative of the Chinese. It's very indicative of the Chinese. And we can learn a lot from Asians altogether, especially when it comes to long-term strategies. They know what they're doing, ladies and gentlemen. I tell you, they don't come in like Americans to a certain degree with sledgehammers. They come in with a scalpel. Because a bombshell just hit Georgetown University study. Because what it reveals that China has funneled over $200 billion in secret loans to U.S. businesses over 25 years, mainly via shadow financing deals. And this is while America was arguing politics. Have you noticed that? We go back and forth and we blame China, but then we get into all these nonsensical arguments, Black versus white, Republicans versus Democrats, blacks for Trumps and conservatives for liberals. We get it all to all these political talks. All the while, China, as I reported yesterday, bought an intelligence insurance group. They insured CIA agents, FBI agents, Homeland Security agents, Secret Service agents. They insured them so they knew who they were. Would they be covert or overt? They bought the insurance company that insurance, maybe, negligence or malfeasance or anything they probably could have done in the field. China had that information of who and what they were, allegedly. But now you see this. That's not the only thing that China was doing. China was buying leverage this entire time. China had hidden loans, mean foreign influence without public scrutiny. And if the U.S. infrastructure, manufacturing, or even tech is built on secret money, we're not just playing catch up, we're compromised already. Some people would like to believe that implosion of America, violence in America, this discombobulation of America is somehow the differences of the people. And our biggest enemy, and when I say enemy, not like war enemy, like, we should be killing each other. No, our largest economic enemy is China. They want to be number one. And believe me, if we allow China to be number one, they will stay number one for a very long time. I'll say this once more because people think I'm telling a fib, is that China, billion-dollar businessmen and their government gets together every 5 years and they plan an agenda, milestones of how China is going to topple the world for the next 100 years. So every 5 years, it may alter a little bit and change because of technology, because of, economic emotions throughout the world, but nonetheless, they're planning for the next 100 years. And as you see, China has rose to power very quickly. I want you guys to look over the past 20 years who had the top GDPs, and look where China is. China is number 2 behind America. Granted, if we back out currency by gold, China would easily be number 1. But since our money is backed by fiat, our money is backed by debt, how can a country $38 billion, $38 trillion in debt to themselves and other country still have the largest GDP and be the richest country in the world? Now, granted, some people say, well, GDP, gross domestic product, that has to do with other things, exports, imports, tariffs, and taxes. I got it. $38 trillion in debt to yourself and other countries, and your dollar is still worth, 5 times the amount in Brazil, 40 times the amount in the Philippines. How? I guess there's some things about finance I truly don't know. Now, the current Pope Leo, he has condemned the U.S. for extremely disrespectful treatment of illegal immigrants and refugees, calling it a moral crisis. Now, a lot of people may think when the Pope speaks, it's not just to Catholics, it's a global signal. Again, the Pope speaks, he's a world-renowned religious figure. He has his own city within Italy, Vatican City, his own security guards that have military weapons. So I get it. I mean, for ages when the Pope speaks, people say that, that was the word of God to a certain degree, that people have reverence and respect for the Pope. They said that it's a global signal. Because do not forget that the Pope, he represents 1.3 billion people in the world. That's a lot of people. Well, we got 8 billion people in the world, 1/8. That's a lot. And his words challenge U.S. border policies and detention practices and demand moral clarity in the midst of fear-driven politics. Are we truly a nation of values, a nation of convenience? Is the Pope's word empty? without power, without influence? Because the reason why I asked that, I did a little Google search. You know me, I did a little Google search. And I was just looking at historical condemnations of slavery by popes. They condemned it in 1537, 1839, 1888 to Brazil. And these are different places around the world, not just the US. But it says here, Pope Paul met with MLK in 1964 and encouraged his peaceful protests against racial discrimination. He also prayed that King's assassination will lead to a new common purpose of forgiveness, peace, and reconciliation, and the equality of free and just rights. Now, again, we have all these accounts of, you know, wherever slavery was, of all these popes calling out the injustice of Black people around the world. That's one thing I'm missing. Let me tell you why. You're a powerful figure like the Pope. You can influence and motivate people to do the right thing. That's how powerful I believe the Pope to be, or I thought the Pope was. Why am I saying that? Because it's 1.3 billion Catholics in the world. A lot of them are white and Hispanic. And if the Pope called to end racism, that could be his new mission. I mean, he's a spiritual leader. Don't get me wrong. He's a spiritual leader. He's the Pope. And as the Bishop of Rome, right? He's the Bishop of Rome. He is the head of the Holy See. He's head of the Holy See, the Roman Catholic Church central government, which in turn is assisted by various departments of the Roman Curia, right? And the Pope, he makes decisions on issues of faith and morality for Catholics throughout the world, as well as people. So my thing is, if the Pope comes out and states that to all my Catholic brothers and sisters in Christ, I'm going to continue on my journey to end racism between black people or people with the appearance of dark melanin tone, regardless of their race, to end racism. And I encourage all Catholics day in, day out, and I'm going to travel the world for equality. When has the Pope ever done that? You really want to end racism? You want to end slavery around the world? Then you have to be about action. Because let me tell you something. The Pope got his own city. I have nothing against the Pope, by the way. But the Pope has his own city, has his own military, basically, his own security guard. He has a vast network of cardinals that he can just send out. And they can stand up just like our forefathers did, our foundational Black American Grand Master teachers, and get up on soapboxes and preach the good word and end racism. That's what the Pope can do. The only reason why I'm saying it is because for hundreds of years, the Pope have come out and say, I condemn the treatment and disrespect of illegal immigrants in America. Okay. Good job. But when it came to slavery and injustice of Black people around the world, yeah, you said the same thing. But again, words without action means nothing. That's in the word, right? I thought that was in the word. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, you guys should definitely tune in this evening. I have one of my power pieces. I'm going to premiere at 6:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. I think that you guys will really enjoy it. I'm really going to break down what is a bed wench and what is their mission. Have a good one.